So
Yeah.
they didn't want to be viewed how you viewed them, like hair
Yeah.
metal. But
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot of bands that didn't want to be viewed that. And it took us years to get any interviews with the Cult because they didn't even want to be called heavy metal, right? We went through with the magazine, we went through an entire decade where bands wouldn't talk to us because they didn't even want to just be called heavy metal, right? Because heavy metal was had such a low opinion. I love hair metal. I was there for all of it entirely, and I was into most of those bands. By 83, I was 20 years old exactly. That's when hair metal starts. It
and
starts in
that's when I was
83,
born.
84.
Sorry.
Okay. And so by the time Appetite for Destruction comes out, I have thousands of albums and I know I'm an encyclopedic nut of all this stuff, right? I love all forms of heavy metal and I know a lot about prog and I've been a drummer and we had a band briefly in the whole bit, right? But it's funny, you get up to 87, 88, and now hair metal's, right in the mature phase. It's got about 4 years to go. So this album comes out right in the middle of hair metal. And yeah, it's frankly no Soundgarden. It doesn't change things in a huge way. They're the dirty. There's already bands that are Aerosmith inspired, and they're just another one that comes around. I think this album gets so much praise because of the insanity of how many copies it sold. It just dominated, and the band dominated forever, and they were always in the headlines and that. But at the same time, you had your Faster Pussycat and your Cats and Boots and your L.A. Guns and Poison was going to pivot and Warrant would pivot with Dog Eat Dog and Skid Row would come along and they would pivot on their second album. You had Badlands. Um, I would even go so far as to say I'm a bigger Badlands and Love Hate fan than I am of Guns N' Roses. I think the greatest album that ever came out of the hair metal scene is Love Hates Wasted in America, 1992. And it happens to be a very Guns N' Roses derived album. I think that's the one thing about it that is the only thing about it, because I think it's an absolute masterpiece. I think that's the only thing about it that's a little bit to its detriment that you definitely feel that Guns N' Roses influence on it.
and
But
just like with GNR, you can hear the influence of what created them with the Aerosmith, combining
yeah,
that with the hair metal. But I don't
yeah.
think you can deny the impact. And this is why I was okay with doing a Guns N' Roses podcast. All right. I had no idea I'd be doing this 9 years later. It was for fun. Being in radio, I wasn't getting my creative itch at the time, and being able to still do it. And
Mhm.
why GNR? Just because they're my favorite band? No, because I can talk to my son's gonna know what Sweet Child of Mine is. He's gonna know. You can't deny the impact of that song. Welcome to the Jungle, Paradise City,
Yeah. Oh,
uh,
for sure.
the
Yeah.
visual look of Axel and Slash, I think, speaks volumes of just who they are, because they were more than just guys. They were caricatures. People dress up as them for Halloween still. So I think it's those things add into. Yeah, I totally again respect, and of course I'll have listeners that will not like your opinion. I say be easy on Martin. This is a Guns N' Roses centric channel. I understand that, but we all love here. He didn't say he
Yeah.
hates them. Well, let's
Yeah.
let's pump the brakes. And I'm saying this on a taped podcast, but I'm just I'm
Yeah.
preemptively just saying that. But
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like it's those things that you can talk about Guns N' Roses at 40, and
Yeah.
we go back to their not the longest discography. Well, let's switch the pivot to, because we can stay and talk about Appetite
Mhm.
Forever, that era. What do you consider them as a band? Because they certainly pivoted with Lies. I know a lot of it was, the half of it was already done, but just as a different approach to making music. Of course, Use Your Illusion and Chinese Democracy and whatever they've released since the
Yeah.
reunion. How do you even pigeonhole them into anything? Is
Well,
Appetite
yeah,
is his
that's
own
true. Yeah.
planet? Like Appetite's
Yeah.
like his own planet, and Guns N' Roses is just
Yeah,
I don't
I
know.
know. It's such a strange catalog. And I also get my backup when people, there are a lot of Guns N' Roses fans who really start putting down even Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 compared to Appetite because they're just blinded by the greatness of Appetite. And it is great. I mean, what I love about this band is that like first of all, just before we leave Appetite, it's like
Hmm.
the production is amazing. It's gritty yet it's perfect, and it's a conservative but really good, hard hitting production. I love the drumming on it, the kind of push pull quality. It's a long album. It's an ambitious album. It goes to a lot of places. Slash as a guitarist is so hard to kind of describe, but I just love what he does, and he absolutely does of his own sound. And but it's his own sound in the way that there's no like cheap adjectives that you could apply to it like you could to other guitarists with their own sound. I think with him it's just this kind of, he seems so connected to the guitar. It's like he's strangling the heck out of the guitar. There's a little bit of, when I try to describe Zach Wild, I often bring up Slash because I think there's a little bit of Slash in Zach Wild as well. But the sound he gets, and the it's traditional yet somehow he still manages to have his own sound, and that's amazing, right? And I also love the way that as you go through the catalog, they're just breaking rules all over the place, in terms of what to do. And I almost feel that the fact that they are so sporadic and they have broken a lot of rules, and they release long albums and covers albums and short albums and quasi live albums and songs, right? What I've learned to appreciate a lot while doing this book is how much of an absolute artist Axel is, how much he just loves the creative process, loves art, will not put anything out until it's ready. We think of him as reclusive or secretive and stuff, but he will collaborate with all sorts of people. He has no problem working with a variety of people, letting people into his orbit. So I love the fact that there is just all this variety and time. It's like time means nothing to them, which is so cool, right?
Yeah.
With the crazy, crazy years and years of lead up to Chinese democracy, and then they put out this super ambitious, great album. Um, and then I also feel like then it's just a song here or there, or a soundtrack song, or a cover, or Sympathy for the Devil, or whatever. But again, it's like when you add it all up, it's a pretty lengthy catalog. It's pretty long. I often, people even put down Metallica for this as well, right? So many years between albums, but then when the album comes out, it's like a double CD, right? Um,
Right.
that's full. Both discs are full, kind of thing. So it's long, right? So yeah, I do like that about the catalog. And again, you ask how do you describe them over time? You know, immediately as hair metal is ending in September of 1991, with a significant milestone, with Nevermind blowing up and coming out at the same time as Use Your Illusion.
Mm.
I just did a Contrarians video show of this. I called it gray hair metal, right? My favorite top gray hair metal albums, albums from sort of 91, 92, 93, 94.
Okay.
Um, because hair metal does last a little longer, and there are some really good albums that come out during that period. I mean, like I say, I love hair metal. I love the entire length of it, right? So that's why I don't feel it's a negative thing calling this a hair metal album, right?
Yeah, and
Um,
I don't either. I'm a fan of the term and of that
yeah,
genre of music.
I
So
never had
yeah,
a
no.
problem with it. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, so I do like that once you get this massive epic amount of material out of them after the two Illusion albums, they've doubled down and proven that Guns N' Roses are an entity to themselves. They're just like they're just they're now it's hard to put a frame on it. In fact, they start moving away from the argument that you can call them a hair metal band, because now the palette even widens even further.
Mm.
I mean, this is a first album, and it is one album. It's granted, it's what is it, 55 minutes or something? It's really incredibly long for a single album. People forget how long this record is. It's weird that they crammed so much stuff onto one piece of vinyl, right? Um,
And they
but
left stuff off too. That was ended up being Unusual Illusion. Like
yeah,
November Rain could have been an Appetite.
yeah,
Shadow of Your Love could have been an Appetite. So it is incredible. It
yeah.
really is incredible. And
But my just to end
go on.
off that point is I think they do become this great epic, kind of like a Rolling Stones rock and roll. We're a generalists. We're a world not world music, but not even world sort of there are certain world bands out there in hard rock, and I put Deep Purple and Iron Maiden that way. I don't look at Guns N' Roses that way, but I suppose I think of them as transcending all genre tags by the time you get to the end of the both Illusion albums.